Hello and welcome to another week of the Storied Arcs podcast. I'm your co-host Mike.
And I'm your co-host Alex.
And today we are continuing our discussion in Manhattan Projects, the Manhattan Projects, by Jonathan Hickman, Nick Pitarra,
yep.
Jordie Bellaire, and Ryan Brown. Despite what we were saying at the end of the last one, Ryan Brown does in fact do issue 15. I'm reading in single issue, and I saw his name on the cover, and I was like, I thought we contradicted that, but whatever.
Well, databases like Legal Comic Geeks are normally pretty good, I've found, but their hit rate is probably like 93%, something like that, in terms of credits, which is still pretty darn good when you think about the volume of comics that exist out there. But every so often, they miss the hit. They have maybe it's a book that people haven't submitted a correction or something like that, and this is one where they got it wrong. So Ryan Brown is coming in as a guest star, at least in last volume, this volume, and we can say the next volume as well. Doing the Oppenheimer War books, the stuff that is set inside of Oppenheimer's mind, I guess, the Oppenheimer Civil War. Ryan Brown's coming in doing that stuff, which is great.
Right. Yeah. I was. You did a remarkably succinct version of what the hell is going on here. But let me just say, Jonathan Hickman again has caught me off guard, because remember, like at the end of volume 1, I was like, he's the anti-Pixar guy. He's not going to do it like anything sentimental with the characters. There's not going to be any feelings on like that level. Like there are feelings, but not on that level. They're more thoughts than feelings. But like issue 11 opens with this relationship between two characters that I was like, oh, now I want to follow these characters. Like I like these characters now. And then it ends with one killing the other, or trying to. Attempting
to,
right. And then the trade ends with the other one being dissected by Oppenheimer with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Like the sentences I'm saying right
Einstein
now.
With a chainsaw.
Einstein with a chainsaw. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Oppenheimer eats people.
Yeah, it is interesting. Those characters there. That is Dalian, who is he is the almost like the Dr. Manhattan kind of character, the guy that got irradiated, and he's just like a radioactive skull and bones and whatnot. Once again, actual person. And the event that we saw that they showed in the flashback, that is how he actually died in real life. And Enrico Fermi, who, as we discussed last episode, is an alien that no one knows about. And I made the comment last episode of he transforms into an alien and wipes out like 20 soldiers. Yeah. Right. And then transforms back. That happens with Don. I was like, they don't mention it. No one makes a big deal about it. But you go back to that scene. The only other person in the program with him is Dalian. He's the only other person in that scene. And as we find out in this, in kind of that combo issues of 11 and 12 there, that he is the only person that knows. Now he doesn't know Fermi's, like, I guess, ultimate sleeper cell programming kind of thing. But he knows he's an alien, and he hasn't shared that with anybody, and so it puts a new spin on that sequence in the previous volume, which is why he's so nonchalant about it.
Well, let me tell you what really put a spin on for me. I am reading my homemade, library bound all 29 or whatever issues, and when I got to that one that, revealed like, you should really tell him at some point you're not human. Yeah. I was like, wait, he's not human. And then I flipped to the cast of characters page, which is at the back of every issue, probably the back of each trade. But every issue I'm seeing the gallery of characters again. And I looked at the Fairmay one and it says blah, 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 not human. And I was like, oh, did that change? But no, that's always been there. You flip back all the way to the second issue. And it says Enrico Fermi, not human. Actually, there's no cover. There's no cast gallery in issue 2 or issue 1 that first appears in issue 3. Yeah. And because the only character in issue 1 is like Oppenheimer and his
yeah, I don't.
and Graves.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think the rest of the Manhattan team, project team, shows up until like issue 3, 4, 5. But yeah, no, you're right. That is there from the beginning, and we haven't seen any of it. We don't see that until volume 2, and then the reveal to everybody isn't until volume 3. So that's just the thing they threw out there. And you're right. It did allow them to have that moment of like of friendship, of them like walking out, looking at the view, and like kind of the one person that kind of cared about him, Dalian at least. Of course, then we find out that it was Fermi that had sabotaged the plutonium core, the demon core, as they as it's called in the book and in real life. But still, he's like finding a way for him to move.
Then
around.
he alleviates the pain, with that thing to put on, and then. Yeah. Once he alleviates the pain, it's like take him outside work together and assassinate him. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a mess. What a mess.
Yeah. But then, but I again, this is a little unlike volume 2. Volume 2, we were introduced to a new set of characters, right? The characters in the Soviet Union, we got their backstory some. Here we jump back to our original cast of scientists, and they find ways to get backstory on Harry Dalian, we get backstory on Enrico Fermi, and in the process of doing that, we also can propel the story, again, not a overarching narrative, loosely overarching, but it progresses the timeline forward, right? We see that they have a space elevator to the moon. Right. They figure that out, that they're on the moon. They're doing stuff there. Oppenheimer has this big 3/4 stage plan. I really did like, I guess that was in issue 12 when we got Fermi's backstory. I liked that we jumped back to that first meeting with the alien race.
Yes.
And we got the exact same.
And I only read the black boxes of dialogue there.
Exactly, which I think you're supposed
once
to.
Once I realized what was happening.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were a monthly reader of this and that happened a year ago, I'd probably replay the whole scene and be trying to read everything behind it. But binging this.
In that case, what you would probably do is go back to that issue.
That's true. Yeah.
Because I didn't go back and bother to check, because I'm giving them credit that I'm sure they deserve, is that I'm assuming those panels, those drawings, those dialogue boxes, those word balloons are all are note for note exactly what it was in the issue we saw the first time, except now we get the overlay of the, I guess, telepathic communication between Fermi and the one alien that lived, right? Who I guess is from his race, maybe a commander or a handler or something like that. I did love that connection, and another chance for them to go back to that red blue color palette, to go back and again
perfectly
and again showing the idea that anyone in red is effectively a bad guy, right?
Depending on the point of view of the story at the time, but yes.
Because I mean, when we get to the Oppenheimer Wars again, it's very red versus blue. I was wondering, because they used red versus blue so much in this, especially in this issue 15. I was wondering if either Hickman or Pitarra was like a Halo guy, because this would have been like 10 years after. I don't know if you were aware of Red versus Blue, the web series that was
Halo.
The Halo, the web series that was on Rooster Teeth, I think it was. But yeah, in there, right? Our Oppenheimer, the quote unquote good Oppenheimer, is blue, and our psychopath one, the one that's in the world that eats people, is red. And so when we go back to these when they use that coloring convention in other issues, right? Even though those aliens, the Seal, I guess, SIILL, they didn't appear to be necessarily good, but oftentimes they were bathed in blue, and Fermi was in red, and everyone else was in blue. Just the idea of being, this is the person that's activated, I guess,
Yeah.
So they've gone to that so often that there's just, they formed an instant connection for the narrative beats of the story with just what they've done.
To your point, in the Oppenheimer War, issues, Robert is blue.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and the
Joseph is
Joseph
red.
Cannibalistic Brothers red.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And every time
intrinsically,
Robert,
I'm a little bit cheering for blue / Robert, right? Because
yes.
he was presumably morally a little more tethered and centered
Yeah.
than Joseph, and is the better scientist.
Well, he was the one that didn't eat people until the very end of this volume here. But yes,
even then, he only ate someone like their not body. I mean, I loved all of the not hyphen stuff.
Yeah,
like, not 5 days later.
That was my favorite. The not 3 days, so not 4 days, not that was my favorite one there. Yeah, the idea of that the passage of time is weird there. But yeah, it's one of those things that a decision was made from a storytelling standpoint that when we go back and do these things, we're going to adhere to this hardcore, and that's going to we're going to train our readers into viewing and seeing these scenes in a very in the way that we want them to, and I think something like that, I mean, it seems super simple on the surface, right? We're just going with 2 colors, right? These guys are red, these guys are blue. And, but it's so effective in a way where you don't have to spell it out for the reader. You can just go back to it whenever you need to. And you've already conditioned them, especially now, as we are in this volume here, crossing the halfway point of the original series, at least. Right, that you have trained and conditioned your readers that when they see this kind of flashback scene, there's an instant connection and understanding of what the color conventions mean. And I think stuff like that is super cool. You see it you can see it in other like motion picture visual media. I always think of, and it's not a great example, but I always think of Traffic. Where they were Soderbergh overused,
which we've referenced before, and
with the idea of like, if it's got a yellow tint on it, you're in Mexico. Congratulations. Doesn't matter what movie you're in. Doesn't matter what genre you're in. You put a yellow filter over your camera lens, you're in Mexico. Great, But
Traffic is not entirely to blame for that, although they were the first one to like really. It was overdo it.
Yeah, because then
everyone was like, "Oh yeah, Mexico is yellow." Now that I think about it, it's like no. Traffic said Mexico was yellow, and
but then they would also use
blue.
He said they would have, but it was a really heavy blue, and so it was very obvious that there was there. And then I think DC was like neutral, so they were doing that. It was obviously an intentional choice to have a super heavy tint to everything. Which again, it's effective. You don't once you establish that for the viewer in this case, it makes sense. But like it can get ridiculous and over the top, especially when everything does that. So in a comic like this, it is a way for them. It is a shortcut way for them, just by using colors to help propel and explain their story and what's happening on the page. And again, I think stuff like that's so cool because it doesn't work in every, it's not applicable in every kind of comic scenario. But I think when you do something like flashback, I think about something else we talked about way back when we were talking about Grass Kings, that anytime you, and it's oftentimes when here we're using in flashback, but sometimes when a book goes into memory, right? When you're seeing the memory of someone, the way that Grass Kings did it was it went a little more abstract. They didn't use panel lines, right? That the watercoloring, it was a little more washed out. It wasn't coming to a point, it's like they let the paint drip some because it's like, it's hazy in your memory.
Right.
And so you can, there are different ways to show visually that you're either in the past or in a memory or something like that. And anytime a book makes a choice like that, I always think it's really cool, especially when I think it's effective. And I love that what they've done here is that they can use it in different ways. It's not just for the Oppenheimer Civil War. Right. It was established before then when we saw the flashbacks in that first book with Oppenheimer. Right. The Infinite Oppenheimers, issue 1, when you saw one, Robert was blue, Joseph was red. So they established that right there. And then when we realize what story we're reading, that the Oppenheimer we're following is not the one that we think of, they can carry that through and apply that in any situation where they want to show that kind of dichotomy. And like, I think like something like that, I think is fantastic. That the way to kind of plan ahead in that way. We're gonna put this convention, this coloring convention, in the first issue, the very beginning, before you know what it is. And by the time it's obvious of what it is, you're already going to know it. Like, but by the time we quote unquote explain it by making it super relevant, like in the Oppenheimer, that first finite Oppenheimers, I think it is in issue 10, end of volume 2. By the time we get to there, it's going to be so obvious because you're so used to it already that anytime you see it going forward, you're totally locked in. And I love stuff like that. The deliberate, the intentionality of something like that, to set it up and follow throughout your book. Stuff like that, I think is super rad.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about coloring, there's, I only ask you questions like this, not because you're a visual artist, but because you have interacted with more comic artists than I have, just through the merit of, being there over the years. And you never know what comes up at those tables when you're talking to them. But I was admiring the haziness of the steam room sauna scenes.
Oh, yeah.
So everything's like fully drawn and colored, and then there's a wash haze over it. And I can't remember now if the lettering is underneath that haze or above it. I was thinking that the lettering was above it, meaning it was a very particular order everything was done in. But I was wondering, like, is that Pitarra or Bellaire? Like, did Pitarra like soften the lines there so that could be done over it? Or was that some like digital trickery that Jordie Bellaire did in the coloring?
You know what? I don't know. I would assume that's on the colorist. Jordie Bellaire, someone I never met at a comic show before. I don't think she does a lot of shows, which is unfortunate because she's phenomenal. But I would assume
busy doing books. She's just,
I know,
got
on every damn book.
Yeah.
I would assume something like that is colored and then washed out.
I agree. Yeah, and I obviously scripted
that would be my guess. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that would be my guess.
But that's everyone, Hickman specifying it so that when Pitarra draws it, he knows what will be done to it after it leaves him.
Yeah.
Speaking to some artists, it's not always clear to them what will be done after they handle, especially like if you're a penciler and it's going to an inker and then a colorist and then a letterer. And I think I remember even asking way back. I mean, you pulled the Grass Kings reference, which is probably what sparked my memory. I remember asking Hillary Jenkins, like, if she ever got sad about letterers taking up space over really pretty pieces of like, it's a beautiful watercolor page. And it's like, like not shade at the letterer, but like to junk it up with letters when it's just objectively a beautiful piece of art to sit there and stare at. Okay, so I'm looking at it now, and the lettering is not washed out. So all of the captions sit on the top layer. So whatever it was happened, before the letter production.
Yeah, and what I would say is this is where, this is why so many art teams, but so many books have the same teams on them, right? Like if you're someone who draws traditionally with pencil and you send it to an inker, there's a reason why you're going to work with the same inker for 20, 30, 40 years, right?
Right.
Because you know what they're going to do. And then when that goes the same, Jim Lee still draws this way and his stuff goes to Scott Williams and then to Alex St. Clair. Like that's the progression, and those guys have been working together forever. And regardless of what we think about the work, there's trust there. you know. I think we talked about this maybe a few episodes ago at some point, talking about Greg Capullo not retiring, but like probably stepping back from doing a lot of interior work because the people that he had been working with, like Jonathan Galpion and things like that, Necio Placia, his inkers and colorists, like those guys are moving on and doing other things, so they don't have time to work with them anymore. Now, when Capullo does a cover, he often will ink that himself and then maybe send off to a colorer, but he can't do that for an ongoing interior book. And he's like, hey man, I'm at a point now where like I can't set up a new team. I've been doing this for so long, you know? And so the idea of having to try and reestablish or establish anew that level of trust in an artistic partner, absolutely, it's hard to get to. And so yeah, I would imagine on you know, especially I think when you get to point to a book like this, those things are either they're written into the script or it's just implied, you know, like, hey, these guys are going to be in a sauna, so there's going to be some level of effect on there, whether or not you needed that to be there or not, you know. I mean, something like that could have been, I mean, because
this is issue 14,
even on those panels there, right?
Well, okay, yeah. But so, like the thing that really like I think the thing that I really was wowed by and loved about it is the very first panel is shot from outside the sauna behind the closed glass doors. Yes, and that doesn't have the haze, but the haze is only in the section, and then you enter the haze and you're doing a close-up shot of them. So it's just very cool directing from Nick Pitarra. It's like a good director's eye.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and they do the same thing on the next panel when the guys with the Who come to get them. It's the same convention there, right? Where they jump back outside and we see the guys who come to arrest them. The thing that I love about this scene myself, I do love that. I do love the setup and then the interior, is that there is this haze over the whole panel. But even within that, you see like heavier, denser clouds kind of around their torso and legs and all that. So there is this other idea that like the steam is still rising. It's at different densities, even within the page, and yet the whole room is mostly
driven by censorship, but that's a much better thought.
Well, I mean, but I mean, you can see, you know, Garanin is he's wearing tighty whities there. You know, he has underwear on, but still the idea that they're even within this washed out scene, the effect that you're getting there, there's still another level of this is a sauna, this is a steam room. You know, and even in that first scene that you pointed out that starts from outside the steam room, you can still see a little bit of that on the floor, right? Like it's kind of coming out through the bottom of the doors and all that. So it's like they've really gone out of the way to let you know this is a sauna, which they don't really have to do. Like it's kind of obvious where they are, you know. But yet they put that effort in there, and to have it stand out so visually different, where there's just no question about what's happening. Again, stuff like that's great. That a book like it, that isn't the kind of thing I think you notice. You just read through it and you're like, oh right, they're in a steam room. You keep going. They're in a sauna. They get arrested, and then we cut back to the next page when they're all locked up, and we're back to full pages without that wash on it, and it is kind of a shock. You're like, all right, this is the regular color. That isn't the kind of thing that you would recognize or think about, but they put time into it, and it adds a little level to that book there, right? It's not going to jump out at you when you're reading it the first time, but when you think about the effort and the intent, once again, the intentionality of we're going to make these different, so you understand we're in a different place, you know, just because the story dictates that. That level of effort is again, it's not necessarily needed, but it makes that book a little bit better.
You totally agree. And, you know, and speaking of little details that go a long way, you might be. This might be one where our age gap comes into play again. But did the title of that issue 14, do anything for you?
Hold on. Let me go back here.
I mean, I can tell you what the title is.
Upward Bound.
Yeah, which is a reference to
Homeward Bound,
because the dog is in space.
Yes,
and,
yes,
and they're like tracking the dogs like but that is one of those movies where I dare not look it up on Rotten Tomatoes now, but there are so many movies of that era where I was a kid, and like if you taped it off TV in the summer, you would just I don't like 10, 15 tapes, and like that was taped on one of them. So we just watched the crap out of that movie as if it's an all-time classic. And I also was deeply convinced that Angels in the Outfield was a phenomenal movie that everyone thought fondly of, and had that just completely obliterated a few months ago when I looked at that on Rotten Tomatoes, which, like the retcon Rotten Tomatoes is not entirely accurate because it's kind of like, yes, there are only 29 formal reviews that they tracked down for Angels in the Outfield, because you have to go find old newspapers because people weren't archiving stuff like that. But
that's like 93 or something like that, early 90s. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, though, early performance from him.
That one was another one where like scales fell from my eyes. I was like, I wouldn't have believed you until I saw it on IMDb, and then without needing to go watch any clips, was able to replay in my head like, oh my, that is Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah, Danny Glover, Tony Danza.
Yeah, so Homeward
you
Bound.
Want to know? So
was the the Michael J. Fox, and
this may be
87% on Rotten Tomatoes. Oh man, I knew it was a winner.
This may be the age gap between us here. Never seen the movie. Definitely read the book in school.
I didn't know it was a book, but
yes, I think I read that book in. I
would have been
93.
February 3rd. I would have been 7 going on 8.
Yeah.
I would have been 7.5. And I think that would be like the prime age for that movie.
I think I would have.
Having been, I don't know, 10 or 11 at the time.
I would have been 12 when this movie came out.
12, yeah. A 12-year-old would not get into this movie.
But I think I read this book a few years earlier in like 3rd or 4th grade or something like that. So maybe around the same time you would have seen the movie, I would have read the book. But yes, I did see that. And yeah, because I am familiar with the story, and I do know because I did read the book. But so, we there is this kind of this one. I think this volume is probably the first of the 3 that throws out a lingering plot thread, and that is Laika in space.
Yeah,
where we see him launch. We are led to believe his signal is lost. And then we do there is kind of he gets kind of a post-credit stinger where we see the ship and the size of it that he encounters, or she encounters, I guess. So that in terms of like lingering plot threads, you could see it where we're like, okay, well, this is something maybe we're going to come back to down the line. The fact that we, the reader, know that Laika is still out there and we've seen what she has seen. But immediately after that, we jump back into our Oppenheimer war and get right into
this was a very
part
much
2 of that.
Hold that thought.
Sure.
Type ending. No. That's the moment that Hickman's giving us.
Oh,
And I wonder. Obviously, this was done intentionally, but I can't help but wonder if they had done a time before time thing where they bound all the interstitials into its own trade, and just hold off on all of these and drop them right before the ultimate like finale. Because it would have been interesting. I mean, it still will be interesting when I'm finished to go read each Oppenheimer issue. Just read, 1, 10, 15, 19, and just read the Oppenheimer internal saga.
Arc.
But it's one of those where when I talked to Heather Antos about that, about doing that for Time Before Time, she's like, it's a big gamble because when you publish Trade 2, you have to be pot committed to this thing, and you are not guaranteed to hit 30 issues. Run can dry up, and then those issues never get published in Trade.
That is a great point by her. Because there is, it did make sense for a book like Time Before Time, because those were 4 or 5 individual stories told from someone from like an askew viewpoint, right? It was like, here's someone else that's happening, what they were doing. So I could definitely see them pulling those out and making all of your trades like 4 issues and then having the Oppenheimer thing there. I could see that. In this case,
in this case, yeah,
I like
there's
them.
momentum in the story.
Yeah. And there also is still a connection to but Oppenheimer on the material plane,
But what they're saying about the time is what made me think that is when it says, not 5 days later, whatever. I'm like, am I to understand that this whole Oppenheimer Civil War happened in what in real time was moments, but it played out like a saga down there, which is why it would work as an interstitial later. I'm just saying it could work, not that it ought to be, but it could.
I mean, my understanding is, yes, that time is meaningless there. And so, again, the idea that the blue faction went away after their defeat and they talked about we built schools and taught them math and geometry and engineering and physics. And they came back and they had mech suits, how long does that take? That takes an infinite amount of time, but in the no space of the mind, it's a couple of days, a couple of not days, whatever. So that stuff's all timey-wimey there. But again, what I'm saying is the setup here going into issue 15 is we see after Oppenheimer has staged his coup, right? He staged his coup on the Manhattan Projects and he's convinced a coked up JFK, which may be redundant. I don't know. I wasn't alive back then. But he's convinced him that General Groves is a traitor, right? He's like, hey, they've been working with clearly, the Russians.
That wasn't an improv in the moment pivot.
Yes.
That was the long play.
It was a setup. Yeah. So it ends that issue 14 ends with all of our remaining effectively protagonists, right? All of our scientists and even the Russians that they're working with, they're all imprisoned. And then we jump back to Oppenheimer, who is seemingly we don't know what he's seeing there, but he manifests somehow Robert Oppenheimer, the blue Oppenheimer, right? And then there's that cut to him, and he's got one red eye, one blue eye, as he's holding the wrench. And then we go into issue 15, which is back into the Oppenheimer Civil War. And so I like these issues, the way they've written them and presented them in the flow of the story, because I think we are seeing the real-time effect of the Oppenheimer War in his head on the Oppenheimer that's in the material plane.
Right.
It isn't only happening in his head. I think by seeing his eyes being 2 different colors there, and even with that, he says, I'm growing more conflicted with each passing day. So it's this idea that the war is brewing in his head. And so that is a progression from what we saw earlier. So I like having those breaks there. And also I like that they've built them in. It's we're going to do a 4-issue story arc, and then here's an Oppenheimer story. Next 4 issues, Oppenheimer story. I'm expecting the next thing for the next volume as well, going from issue 16 to 19. That's a story. And then issue 20, boom, another Oppenheimer issue. So I like the setup there. And the Oppenheimer issues are so ridiculous. I mean, they've allowed Ryan Brown to just draw the most absurd stuff, and it
so
reminds me.
Though. I mean,
it's so great, but it reminds me of the books he does with Charles Soule that the people most known for. Again, Curse Words, 8 Billion Genies, The Lucky Devils. These books that in their nature means he is drawing the wackiest, craziest, basically imaginative things, like Curse Words about a wizard on Earth who can do whatever and make whatever. So he's drawing all sorts of crazy stuff. 8 Billion Genies. Every person in the world gets one wish. They can wish for anything. So imagine what he can draw. The Lucky Devils, we're talking about devils from hell who are coming in manipulating people. So the nature of those books is he can just go bananas on this stuff. And the fact that here he is kind of before those books, getting to draw these absolutely absurd panels, and they look phenomenal, and knowing that it's just a gray background effectively with blue and red characters, just in this crazy war. It's so much fun. It's so ridiculous.
But the other thing that I've been now wondering about is I have not yet read it, but I know that the follow-up series, Beyond the Stars or whatever, follows that idiot guy, the first man in space, and the dog, right? Like that's the premise.
I believe so. Yeah. Yuri Gagarin and Laika. Yes.
Okay. So my only wondering about it now is that sequential? Like, must those things take place after it, or would those things have worked as interstitials had they, had the time and space or whatever during the main run?
Oh, so that's a good question.
I'm curious to see that.
I have not read them yet. So,
but because of the space they leave in these stories and how the storytelling kind of jumps around time, he could basically return to this. No matter how the story ends, he could return to it and keep telling pocket stories within it because it spans decades and multiple countries. And you could do, a 5-issue thing leading up to those aliens who get wiped out by, who get, genocided by, the taking the guy's helmet off or cracking his helmet.
Yeah, 100%. The nature of the story, even though they are focused on the Los Alamos crew, right? And those scientists there, the nature of this book, if they had decided that this were a true anthology story, like a Fables or a Criminal or something like that, or an Astro City, if they had decided that, this could have been like an Astro City thing where you start at the Manhattan Projects, right? And you have stories there, but you could jump, like I said, we have jumped into, again, whenever Kennedy is president in this world, maybe we've jumped 20, 30 years or whatnot into the space race, but you could have jumped to different parts of time, like with the assumption if the Manhattan Projects continued in this way, you could have jumped to like what happens in 1980s, is Star Wars an actual, is that laser defense system, is that a real thing that happens? Like you could do.
Oh, yeah.
If they had constructed this with the idea of it being a true anthology, they could have jumped all over. They could have jumped. They jumped a little bit to Russia, the Soviet Union, the other side of the Cold War at the time, after World War II. They could have jumped to all sorts of places. We saw Japan attack with their gates, right? But we didn't see any of that development. We could have jumped there and seen what they're using. They could have gone all over the place if that was the kind of mandate of the book from the start. But again, that would have been a completely different type of book, but one that I think would have been equally as interesting if they were like, we're just going to see how science left run rampant in this way across the world. What does that look like across time and space and things like that? That would have been very, very interesting. But again, an entirely different book. But you're right though. It's set up it's set up to accommodate that storytelling, even in this current form.
Yeah. Well, crazy book.
It doesn't get any less weird,
it finds new ways to be weird, and it finds new things to make you care about each time. Yeah. And again, it's the type of caring that is intellectual curiosity of like, I didn't think about that, or I wonder where that's going now.
Yeah.
So I can't quite pin down, like the name building is obviously referring to Oppenheimer has these 3 different locations and phases of a project, but there's like also, I mean, I think building plays a couple roles because there's also like, the alien is like, they're interested in building a low grade weapon, which is hilarious. Like he's so advanced that us developing the atomic bomb is a low grade weapon. And it's like not interesting. Also, they're interested in big energy source, a little more interesting, but not really.
Yeah. And then also like, some sort of biomechanical engineering, quote unquote, fixing the human race or something like that. You mentioned it to talk about, finding new ways to kind of get into these characters and actually start feeling from a little bit. We talked about Dalian and Fermi in the beginning, we haven't got a lot of scenes of Feynman and Einstein, but we get one here, kind of in the, I guess, the drug tequila bottle that gets sent to them
Oh
in
yeah.
that last moment, before Einstein passes out. He basically also confesses, like, I'm not the Einstein that you know. You know, I'm not the one. I'm not Albert. He is Albrecht, as we know, much like with Fermi. Although we saw him switch places with Albert Einstein, but he is Albrecht Einstein. And so in that moment too, of like, these guys have been working together, and yes, Einstein has been chopping up and dissecting various extraterrestrial life forms and keeping them in jars, including Fermi's head. But yeah, like in that moment, you're like, okay, some of the layers of these characters are starting to get peeled back. And I found that we talked a lot last week about kind of the disconnect we have with the characters and kind of letting the story wash over us. I find myself still being in that position, but I think you said it a little bit ago that there's an intellectual curiosity to see where this goes, right? Like
Right.
the setups they've done with the characters, I'm not interested in that because, like, oh, I care about these guys. These guys are friends now. I want to see them get along or work through this. I'm interested in to be like, I wonder what that leads to in the story. You know,
Yeah.
there is a detachment to it, but I am still interested in it. I'm interested in these various revelations coming to light and how that affects the story.
You just know it's not going to be one of the stories where everyone hugs at the end, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
and
I
don't care and
get that
expect
kind of it.
Yeah,
I don't want it. I don't
exactly.
need it.
Yeah, yeah.
And luckily, I'm certain beyond the shadow of a doubt, it will not be happening.
Yeah. What I'm interested in is the wrench that gets thrown into the story and what new problem that causes for them down the line, right? Like, I'm interested to see like that, like Fermi's reveal as a potentially murderous and sabotaging alien, like that throws the story just into whack. People to deal with that, and then it's, you know, and then what's the fallout from that? And again, it's not because I really care about the characters, because like, oh, that's an interesting thing of like, who else is hiding secrets here, right? Well, we know Oppenheimer is. Although I guess they kind of know that by now. Maybe they don't know he's not Robert Oppenheimer. We know that Einstein's holding secrets. And so like this idea of there are still these things that can just gum up the works and make the story go in even crazier directions. That's the part that interests me, that I'm down for. Because yeah, I still don't care if any of these characters live or die or how they end up. Doesn't matter at all to me. Like Fermi being captured and dying and then being dissected, like I don't care about that. You know, I doubt you.
Right. The only reason I want them to survive is, one, I know that we're only halfway through the book right now.
Well,
and I don't want to take things
I'm
off
saying
the table.
in the end, in the end, yeah.
Right. But yeah, and I'm like, I guess my only sadness will be like, I'm fascinated by how far these guys will go. With seemingly no moral consideration or anything. Like, this is basically, if Hickman wanted to write a critique of Ayn Rand and set it during the Manhattan Project, this book would do the job of, like, if you let science run amok apart from morality and it's just about capital and power and conquest, this is what you get. And there's a very famous video game, BioShock, which is like a very not subtly coded critique of Ayn Rand. The villain's name is Andrew Ryan. And, it says, like, no gods, no kings, only man. As soon as you enter the city that he's built underwater, that's only for rich people. And they've all got biometric enhancements and the city's just gone to hell. So it's basically saying, like, this is the inevitable end of the selfishness that Ayn Rand promotes, because that was her whole philosophy, was like, yeah, there's great virtue in selfishness. It's actually still better for everyone if everyone acts selfishly, which is a wild take. But also, you because you're selfish, you don't really have to worry about society or social contract or other people or your neighbors or
Yeah.
even your family members.
The idea that like it all cancels out. It all
right. It all cancels out,
No,
but also you have
yeah.
no obligation to anyone anyway.
Yeah. But they have no obligation to you either. So it's all good, right?
Which
if
is
everyone does
is
it,
that not
right?
the philosophy
Yes.
of everyone in this story? I mean,
very much so. Yeah.
So it makes me wonder: is Hickman, and this is around the time Ayn Rand was alive and writing? I'd have to double check that, but
but it had been around. I mean, at this, it's possible.
No. I mean, the setting of the story.
Okay. Yeah.
The setting of the story. Yeah, she was born in 2005, died in 1982. So
would have been in her 40s. Yeah.
Became
40s,
a U.S.
50s,
citizen in
yeah.
31. So it's like, yeah, she would have been cranking out.
When was Atlas Shrugged? When was that written?
That's a good question. Good God, she's got a long Wikipedia page. She has her fans. And,
of course, yeah.
They're rabid and
it's one word for it.
So
that's a better word for it.
It's the word we're allowed to say while keeping a family-friendly rating.
Yes.
Atlas Shrugged, I believe, was 1951.
Okay, so that would have been around the time that would bracket the time when this book is set. But it's entirely possible that Hickman is writing this book maybe as a response. Yeah, I mean
or at least knowing like that type of thinking was in the water back then.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And he said, and maybe even in the water for him, seeing it when he was writing it in 2012, 13, 14.
That was your Tea Party movement and Occupy Wall Street. And
I could see that. I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a direct response. I wouldn't be shocked if it was just in the air and a tangential response. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if it's like, I've never read Atlas Shrugged, Like
Hickman is someone, but I'm like, I'm prepared to give a critique of it. But yeah, it may not have been on his radar.
Yeah.
Okay, correction. Fountainhead 43, Atlas Shrugged 57.
Okay, there we go. Okay, all right.
Which I think that time gap is about how long it would take me to read those respectively if I wanted to.
Probably so. But I do think you're right about that. And that sorry, not right about maybe the specific critique, but the idea of that's the morality of these characters. It is all about power, right? Everything that they've done has been like, we're trying to take over the world in some way. And that was Oppenheimer's thing was, yes, but Oppenheimer's viewpoint is there's no we take over the world. It's me take over the world. Right. But Groves was very much like us, which is why they're working with the Russians and working with former Nazis and things like that, like working with the Japanese who they were at war with, like trying to consolidate and work together. Like they're on the moon base again. Everyone's up there. The Russian director, again, Garrigan's there, Leica's there. They're all, so everyone's working together with the idea that we collectively can take over the world. And at the same time, we're still in a race against each other. And Oppenheimer comes in and says, no, cutting you all down. I'm going to take over the world. That is very much the mindset of what we have here. And of course that leads to nothing but terrible.
Yeah.
Like that's never having that distance, that coldness, that discovery for discovery's sake, or I think in this case, discovery for power and advancement's sake.
And if we ask the Kaiju Haunted House, Dan Waters, if we ask Dan Waters, I think Dan Waters would be like, it's not a critique of Ayn Rand, that's a critique of American culture. Like, if you put American capitalism into science, this is the output.
This is what you get. Yes.
And I think that would also be an interesting critique. Maybe that's all Hickman was saying. He wasn't honing in on one specific philosopher, but rather like there seems to be an era of this where we're just one bad government regulation. I mean, the interesting version now would be
or lack of regulation.
Exactly. But like for the last 30 years, no one in Congress has been young enough to understand the technology that they need to be regulating. So we are decades behind regulating, big tech, like hopelessly out of date. especially even compared to other Western countries. So that, regulation always lags behind, but it's pretty extreme right now. So you could write a similar thing, like you could write Manhattan Projects now, but about AI companies
Oh yeah.
and about how they're forming a secret cabal to
Mhm.
overthrow the world, and they have all this, uh, uh, power, and the power of these corporations is so much more compelling to them than any state that science or tech bros from every country get together. Like if Zach Kaplan and John Hickman wrote a book together, I think that
Well,
would be it.
what I was saying before about if this book had been fully an anthology from the beginning, that's one of the things they could have done. They could have jumped to a current day like this, and all of the AI that's in our phones now comes from FDR AI. You
Yeah,
know, like there could have been that sort of connection. They could have used that because again, the AI that the FDR AI here was very much the way we thought about AI prior to what we think of it now. That was in like the HAL 9000 version, that sort of thing, right?
right.
Um, even kind of like in the Matrix and things like that. But you could absolutely take the same framework of this book and twist it, not even that hard, to have it reflect our current day, and to see what kind of terrible road that could take us down, if we let that run rampant, much like Hickman and Pitarra are doing here. If the atomic age and all of that were left unchecked, where could that lead to? It is funny they put AI in there, and AI isn't the big bad. He was part of one of the big bads, but like now AI would be the big bad. Like that
Right.
would be the thing. And again, that would be a fascinating story that is available. That would be available to them if this book had a slightly different focus. But yeah, that is a cool what if in my mind. That's not a case of us. At least I don't think it is a case of us wanting and writing a better book than we got. I think that's just a cool option that could have been done here because
Well,
they made
it's like
they made a
this is
choice here
what
and stuck with it. Yeah.
I mean.
But
I'm sure listeners, if you've listened to more than just this series on this podcast, you will know that when I get excited about a book,
yeah.
it just sends me down the rabbit trail of what ifs, and it's
Yeah.
never a
Yeah.
complaint about what I got.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Except maybe with, ironically, the nightly news. I I don't even remember what my pitch was. I just remember when I said it, I was like, "Oh my God, that's better than the book I just read."
And
But it
I
was
think
the same exact story. It was just changing the framing or something.
I think we can give him a pass. That was literally his first thing he walked into Image
And he
with.
did everything, right?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
he
Yeah. Yeah.
he he did
Yes.
everything.
That was his
But
first
still a
book.
very cool book. Like I
It's a
still
great
flipped
book.
through that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you haven't checked out the Nightly News, that's Jonathan Hickman's very first project with Image. Mike and I covered that some X amount of months, maybe years ago. I don't know. Time's a flat circle. But I think you can see a lot of that if you've read a lot of Hickman, even if you've read the Manhattan Project, it was your first time reading it. If you've read a lot of Hickman in general, but haven't read the Nightly News, that is the text. You can read that and you will see everything he's ever done afterwards. You'll find something of that in that book. All of his Marvel stuff, I think all of his creator-owned stuff, that there is a piece of that, a genesis of that somewhere in the Nightly News. So
yeah, if you believe in nothing, how can you accomplish anything? Is our quote that we use as a sticker for that book. But also November 13th, 2023. Coming up on 3-year anniversary of when we covered that book. I have actually started to wonder, like, would it be cool at some point to revisit a book we've discussed before? Or is that is that the snake eating its own tail? But I was like, how much fun would you and I have doing like even a one-shotter to just blow through Paper Girls all at once?
It would be interesting to do that. It would be interesting to do that. I do like
listen to it.
I do like the idea though, like well, it's also why I think I like might gonna have a soft rule of not trying not to cover a creator again within 12 months. But I do like when we have a chance to go back to someone like a Hickman. We can see him in his first book, in kind of the material he's covering, the perspective he has in something like Nightly News, and then jumping to it again now when he's a more established voice after all the work he had done at Marvel, coming in with a book like the Manhattan Projects and having a little more perspective on it, and kind of seeing his growth and how he works with his artists and expands his storytelling. And I think this book is so much richer for that, because it's a little more out there concept, right?
Right.
And I think seeing him grow and play, and maybe it almost feels like he's freer with that, because he knows he can hand these scripts off to someone who can visualize them, whether it's Nick Pitarra or when Ryan Brown comes in to pinch hit. It can be so much more expansive and so much weirder, not just more complex, but just so much weirder and absurd, and have it all make sense because the people he's collaborating with, they get it. They get his scripts and they get the story, and they get what they're trying to do on the page. And that collaboration, that growth of a creator is awesome. And I think, a book like the Manhattan Projects, you don't get a book like this, let alone going 25 issues, technically 29 with the 4 issues of the follow-up series. Like, you don't get that if you don't have goodwill of the creator. If you don't have the track record of someone like Hickman to walk in and be like, yeah, the last book I did with Nick was a little 4-issue series. Now we're coming back with something even weirder, and it's going to run effectively. It's going to be an ongoing for several years. And Image being like, yep, that sounds good. Go do it. And this is what you get. Like, yep. That's crazy there. But I think it shows the trust they have in the name, the brand name that was Jonathan Hickman even back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get a cool book like this.
Yeah. It makes me want to read more Jonathan Hickman, like start to get into his Marvel stuff, but not being an X-Men reader. I'm like, maybe he's the guy that could give me an X-Men. I tried, is it called House of 10, House of X?
House of X, Powers of 10.
Yeah. I tried getting into that, and I was told that was a good jumping on point. I'm like, it's not. I promise. Whoever's out there, I promise you, House of X is not a place to jump in.
He wrote a ton of Fantastic Four, incredible stuff. He wrote basically lead-in.
It's even hard to get in trade. Like,
yeah, when he was writing it, it was just called FF. He wrote the lead in to, and then the main series of Secret Wars, which is the 2015 Secret Wars, which was the ending of the original Ultimate Universe, and it brought Miles and his family into the main 616. I mean, you can just read Secret Wars. I mean, in terms of prepping for what the MCU might be doing with Doomsday and or Secret Wars the next year plus, I mean, just reading Secret Wars is enough. That talks about incursions, multiple war, like a lot of the things that they seemed like Marvel was setting up. It comes from all that Hickman stuff. This is 2012, 13, 14, 15-ish, basically around the time that the Marvel work he was doing at the time while Manhattan Project was coming out at Image. That's the fuel for a lot of what the MCU appears to have been setting up, and I guess maybe still setting up. It's hard to say at this point. But that was prime Hickman era Marvel stuff. So all that stuff is, it depends on your mileage with those various characters. But Secret Wars that he did is a great book to go and jump in and read. So, and at the very least, his creator-owned stuff is awesome. It'll melt your brain. Whether it's someone like, you could read Nightly News or Black Money Murders. I would recommend Red Wing, the first little series he did with Nick Pitarra before this book here. All of Hickman's stuff is great, and it will all make you think. I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to be like, that was the best book I've ever read. But it will all of it will make you go, huh, I wonder what he was thinking when he wrote that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good stuff.
All right. Well, thank you for listening once again. Please join us next week when we knock out volume 4, which will be issues 16 to 20 or 21.
Yes,
20.
16 to 20.
Just 16. Yeah. 16.
Yeah.
Yep. 16 to 20. I don't recall the name of it. It's probably like this one, the name of the first issue.
Probably so, or one of the issues in the.
I like that the trades have names, but the names don't actually end up meaning that much.
Yeah.
Like this time, I was able to say like, oh, it's building, and here's all the different things that are being built. But it's like a horoscope. It's like, you just use a broad generic word, and people will fill in the gaps for you, which might actually be genius on Hickman's part. Would not be the first sign of genius from Hickman. So anyway. Thank you for listening. Find us storiedarcs.com, Blue Sky, Storied Arcs, Instagram Storied Arcs, all the places, and we will see you here next week. Thanks for listening.
Peace.